Sup guys, Bjorn here, I hope you're all doing fantastic. This is gonna be a follow-up to my previous Survival Hunter video about the Survival Hunter tier set coming in 9.2. So if you haven't watched that and want some context about my thoughts about this tier set or how it will impact Survival Hunter in a new patch, you can go watch that video right now. For the rest of you, well, this is gonna be a really interesting video, I think. So, when I did the video about Survival Hunter tier set, I noticed it was bugged, but it was only when I watched the footage back later that I realized that there's some more sus stuff going on here actually. And the 4-piece is really strange, so let's get into that right now. We'll start here with the damage aspect of the tier set, so how it affects the damage of your Wildfire bombs. And this is something that I mentioned in my last video also briefly, that the initial damage is actually the only thing that's affected by the tier set. The dot component of the bomb is not affected, and that is the first sign that something is off here. Something is a little bit buggy with the tier set, because Blizzard is known for their stupid and misleading tooltips, right? But even so, I think this tooltip is extremely misleading when it does not say anything about instant damage being the only thing that matters, and reading the tooltip, you very clearly get the impression that it's the entirety of the bomb damage that is buffed. But stay with me here, guys. It gets much worse. So, without the 4-piece equipped and without guerrilla tactics, just to keep the values baseline, my Wildfire bomb here does 1407 damage instantly, and then 2815 damage over a period of time. So you can see that the dot component here is double that of the instant component. With the 4-piece equipped, we would then assume that the overall bomb damage would increase by 30%, right, as it states in the 4-piece. But that's not what we see. When I equip the 4-piece here, my instant damage on the bomb goes from 1407 to 2373, and the instant, or the dot component rather, doesn't actually change, even though it goes down by 6 damage here. That's just because of the minor stat values, right? I'm losing a little bit of agi, I'm losing a little bit of verse maybe, and that's why the damage goes down. In reality, the dot component actually stays the same, obviously, with the 4-piece, if those stats weren't there. You can see that the 4-piece clearly only affects the instant damage, but it doesn't end there, right? The 4-piece states that it should buff damage by 30%. Well, it doesn't. It rather buffs instant damage by 69%. Nice. So we have a bomb that deals 2373 instant damage. Let's see what happens when we take guerrilla tactics. We would assume that it increases by 100%, right? That the value doubles, and we can see that that is actually true. Guerrilla tactics clearly works as intended. This is only a problem with the tier set. Now, remember that the tier set also has a proc on the 4-piece, right? Where the damage goes from an extra 30% to an extra 80% damage on the bombs. And let's see what happens when we get that proc here. So we can see that it clearly states that it should deal 50% increased damage, nothing about initial, nothing about instant. And when we hover over the actual tooltip of the Wildfire bomb, we can see that the damage has increased from a previous value of 4747 to a new value of 10,681. So what should be a 50% overall increased damage is definitely not a 50% overall increased damage. It's a 125% increase in the instant damage component of the bomb. So, is this some old PTR build? Is this some old tooltip that hasn't been updated? Or is Blizzard up to something? Well, it gets a lot worse here. Let's rewind that footage of the last bomb I threw. Did you catch that? The bomb actually only hit one target with the full damage. So, it did the proc's equivalent of damage to one of the targets, but it actually didn't do extra damage to the other target. And this is huge. So I was really spooked out by this, and I went to go test it. Well, 2 targets in the Korean Sanctum. I could never ever get full damage on both targets. It was just impossible, right? Only full damage on one target, the other target is hit as if the proc doesn't even exist. So I went to 5 targets. Well, same thing here, right? Either just one target takes full damage, or occasionally 2 of the 5 targets would take full damage. But take a look at this 5 target pool here. I threw the bomb at this target, but the full damage didn't even affect that target, it actually affected 2 other targets off to the sides. And this is even worse. Suddenly, we can't even funnel anymore. Consider this scenario. Even if the tier set actually is intended to work this way, to only deal full damage to 1 or 2 targets, or however many it is, well, if it is random, whichever those targets are in the pack, you can never funnel. What if you need to do main target damage to 1 target, and your bomb accidentally does full AoE damage to all of the ads, but not your main target, right? That's gonna be very, very bad for Survival Hunter viability, especially in raid or higher end content. So this is incredibly yikes, and if you go through my tests on 5 targets, I have no luck here whatsoever. I have either 2 targets out of 5, 1 target out of 5 is pretty common, and then sometimes I would get like 2 targets out of 4, weirdly enough, when I tried to like miss the bomb intentionally on some targets to see what was going on there. And at this point, I was really confused, I was really agitated, and I wanted to try bigger pulls, right? Because if it was only 1 target on 2 target pulls, and it was 2 targets on 5 target pulls, then maybe it also went up the more mobs you pulled. And I could not pull more in the Curian Sanctum, so I went to Zereth Mortis. And now it gets even weirder. The first pull I have down there is full damage on 6 out of 7 targets all of a sudden. So I'm like, what the hell is going on? Second pull, full damage on all 7 targets. All 7 targets actually affected by the proc. And at this point, I'm already convinced that the Curian Sanctum is bugged, right? And that it actually works in Zereth Mortis. The next pull, third pull, 5 out of 6 targets takes full damage. Fourth pull, 6 out of 8 targets take full damage. So you can see how I am actually getting pretty convinced here that it is working as intended, almost at least. Then we have a 5th pull with only 2 out of 6 targets taking full damage. The 6th pull is 4 out of 4 targets taking full damage. And the 7th pull was 4 out of 6. And at this point, I'm still very confused, but at least I'm a little bit more optimistic, right? It's clear that this set can actually AoE, even if it can't do it in the Curian Sanctum. And I even had a pull where I just threw a bomb at 2 targets and both of them took full damage, so it's clearly possible here. But the next day was very different. I started in Zereth Mortis and I could not get it to proc on anything, right? It was just 1 target, 2 targets, occasionally doing full damage to 3 targets maybe if I had a large pull, but on 5 targets it rarely hit more than 2 of them. And at the end of that day, I was left with the feeling that the set does not work no matter where we are, and that it's clearly bugged or something more sinister is going on here, right? Because you might have some crazy pop-off moments once in a while where the bombs do actually hit all targets, but usually the average is around like 1, 2, 3 targets taking full damage, which is abysmal compared to what the piece actually promised to do. So what the hell is going on here? What gives, Blizzard? Well, if we take a closer look at the footage of one of those bombs, we can notice something pretty peculiar here. You can see that clearly there's 2 different damage instances. One's when the bomb actually hits the target for the first time, and that is the damage that applies the 80% increased bonus on the proc. And then there's a second damage component to the bomb where the cone actually comes out and the bomb explodes, and that is when the cone damage is applied from the bomb, and that is also when it does not do full damage. So it seems, at least according to this footage, that if you were to just hit that initial explosion on every single target, then it would actually work as intended. Well, what does that mean? That means that the mobs likely needs to be very, very, very grouped in order for this to work effectively, right? And that might also be a reason as to why we don't see this tier set working well in the Curian Sanctum at all, because the mobs are just not grouped enough there, and it will be very, very tough for the small radius of that initial hit to hit all the mobs. Something that does speak against this, however, is what I talked about earlier with us not being able to funnel. If it's just a random target in the area getting hit by the initial blast, then that would be pretty weird, right? Wouldn't the initial hit from the bomb always go on the target that you actually threw the bomb to? That would be pretty logical, right? So I'm not sure what to make of this still, but there's clearly something going on here. There's clearly two different damage instances, which means that if Blizzard doesn't fix the AoE on the first damage instance and make the radius bigger, make it less buggy, or whatever it is that's causing the issue currently, well, then they definitely need to make sure that the full AoE bonus, the 80% increased damage proc, also applies to the cone damage of the bomb, because if it does, then we don't need to worry about this ever being bugged. So if Blizzard notices this and realizes it, and they actually have an intent on fixing it, then I might actually be pretty hopeful that this is gonna get fixed for 9.2. Obviously, if the tier set promises to do 80% increased AoE damage and it all only functions on 1 or 2 targets, and especially if those 1 or 2 targets are randomly distributed in the pack, right? It could be a critter on the ground, it could be a mob that has 5k HP left that's just about to die. That could be the target that's taking your 80% increased bomb, right? Because you have no control over what target actually gets the increased damage, which is incredibly bad. I cannot overstate how bad that is for the Survival Hunter tier set and the Survival Hunter viability in 9.2 overall. So, is this just a crazy set of bugs coinciding? Is this old tooltips not being updated? Or is this Blizzard trying to censor and control the Survival Hunter AoE in 9.2? Maybe they have realized that they have promised too much with this 80% increased damage on the bombs. They know that it's gonna go completely out of hand in AoE, so rather than pulling back and nerfing it, they are instead under the hood doing some cringe target capping shenanigans again, which is just incredibly sad to see, right? We all hate the target cap, and now we're getting target cap tier sets to like 1, 2, 3 targets in mass AoE. That is very, very, very sad to see. I sincerely hope it's just a bug. I sincerely hope Blizzard lets us in on some transparency on this issue maybe, and I hope that it's gonna change for 9.2. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Is this just a bug? Is this Blizzard being sinister again? I would love to know what you guys think. And if you guys enjoyed the video, if you learned something, you could always consider leaving a like down below and maybe even subscribing. That would really help me out a lot. So thanks in advance, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye. Huh? Oh, you're still here. Well, I'm sorry. I think you should probably go and check out a video maybe over here or somewhere here. You can even subscribe down here. That would be really, really nice. I would highly appreciate that. I'm gonna go snort some more lines. See ya.